Imagine a world where peace and rule of law coincide, a world where global superpowers have collaborated to take on challenges that we as a human race collectively face. This, my dear colleagues and panelists, is by no means an easy feat. To somehow evade centuries of conflict, tension, and animosity sounds surreal, even if we all wish for it to be the case. Nonetheless, taking steps in this direction is most definitely in our control. Acting upon the present and steering the world in the right direction is our duty as citizens of the earth and proponents of peace. My colleagues and I, working alongside the United Nations Secretary General, thereby present to you the next leap forward, a joint collaboration between the United States of America and the People's Republic of China in Africa and the Arctic.
Given that our customer is the Secretary General, our partnership lies through the Economic and Social Council of the UN. Since the SG cannot broker deals between superpowers, this branch is intended to support underdeveloped countries, create infrastructure, and aid vulnerable groups. Furthermore, we've been instructed to focus on the SDG 9. Having established the scope of our model, we'll introduce a plethora of issues faced by both nations. We aim to weave them into an attainable first step for the greater long-term goal central to our mission.
This past August, China faced record-breaking droughts in the Yangtze River. While this issue continues to limit access to drinking water, it also affects China's ability to produce hydropower and use the river as a means of trade. The US faces an equivalent crisis in the Mississippi River and the Great Salt Lake. Prices for the flow of goods through these bodies of water have also increased by over 100%.
The environment also plays a role in technology. Microchips, dubbed as contemporary oil, have been the driving force in everything AI, a product requiring significant water. With the trade restrictions imposed by the US to impede China's ability to develop weaponry, suppliers will have a limited market, and Chinese consumers will seek alternatives. Both nations have now exacerbated their water scarcity issues as the US economy will receive less stimulation, and China will need to look to its own scarce resources to catalyze the development of microchips. As a result, China will potentially have two extra motives to launch an operation in Taiwan: being a nation with copious resource reserves and being the world's greatest microchip producer.
Although the Arctic has been climate change's #1 victim, the once inhospitable environment is now turning into the greatest economic opportunity of the 21st century. Minerals and resources used in the production of microchips are becoming increasingly available as ice caps melt. More importantly, incumbent trade routes are waiting to be utilized for the optimization of commerce. The US, an Arctic Council member, must extend its hand out to China to collaborate in the region, especially if they want to lower China's incentive to continue working with Russia there. Although China does have a research base in the Arctic, it doesn't have the insider abilities that the US as a local member state has. To see the benefit for itself in this region, China must look to the future to see how it can work alongside the US in this region.
Conversely, China can take the initiative for such a project with the US in Africa. As part of the Belt Road Initiative, China has financed multi-million-dollar projects, often involving railroads connecting major cities and ports. However, incomplete projects worries the US, as countries falling into debt risk a loss in their sovereignty. Aggregate debt reached $1,600 billion in 2017. Moreover, Chinese microchip technology is increasingly being used to monitor said regions. Overall, the US would like to make itself more available in the region, while China would like to do the same in the Arctic. Meanwhile, both are encumbered with an environmental crisis, which ties heavily back into the use of microchip technology. Now that we can visualize the infinite loop created, we can agree that though targeting one of these global challenges may sound good on paper, we risk the exacerbation of the other issues by shunning them. For example, if we created a joint venture solely targeting microchip development, it would potentially reinforce a precedent that the US does not feel comfortable with China using these technologies unless they are supervised.
Rather, in order to drive long-term change, it is necessary not to take a great leap, but to take one small step, curtailing the sub-challenges, building up to the end goal, so that they're all individually acknowledged, and that we are in a position to continue collaboration post next step. We believe that the most realistic first step we can take is collaboration between the US and China in both the Arctic and Africa. The purpose of this project at its core is to build and plan resilient infrastructure in Africa and the Arctic, to promote sustainable practices, but most importantly, to induce research and innovation at a critical point in time on both ends of the world, as solicited by SDG 9.
Then comes the Nile. By creating research and development centers, we can tackle the issues of depleting rivers. By studying an extreme case in extreme conditions, scientists can then apply findings back home in less extreme scenarios. With having a common goal revolving around the environment, the US can allow and monitor access to the centers to use microchips and other AI. This stems from the premise that these efforts would increase water efficiency, thereby making infrastructure projects more feasible. By creating research and development centers in the Arctic, China can decrease its reliance on Russia and can develop further future plans alongside the US. Research using microchip-based AI regarding new resources could even lead to finding ways to increase microchip production. This could prompt both nations to work together in ways such as the development of AI accelerators, something currently out of our abilities. Being in an extreme environment opposite to the Nile will also allow scientists to explore topics of water scarcity. This venture is politically feasible. There are deep-rooted incentives in store for both nations, other than environmental conservation.
In order to implement our model, we would need the full-fledged support from the US and Chinese governments, as well as private businesses interested in joining. The US government currently finances infrastructure projects in the Nile River. It would only need to upend a branch dedicated to collaboration with China and UN. The Nile Institute and the Nile University already research the impacts of climate change on the river, so close collaboration with them is paramount to moving forward. Either institution could work with the UN to create a work site for US and Chinese scientists. This would increase their credibility and expedite the research process. On the other end, China would need to extend its Belt Road efforts to that region. The US Arctic Research Commission has already established that such centers would only have to extend an invitation to Chinese scientists. Of course, a method of communication will have to be established between the centers of Africa and in the Arctic to reflect on findings. Although the project targets global issues, the main stakeholders are inhabitants of the Nile River and indigenous Arctic tribes who are trying to cope with the changing landscape.
As with any large-scale endeavor, our plan is not without constraints. The UN may encounter difficulty finding private companies from both China and the US to work in the Nile, or even convincing each government to sponsor these missions. The same applies in the Arctic, especially convincing the US government to work with China in US territory. Moreover, if researchers are not able to find meaningful applications for AI for water scarcity, and the Arctic collaboration makes it turn astray, tensions might be even exacerbated.
However, both these limitations would stem from a lack of funding or initiative from both ends. If both nations are truly committed to this model, then the end results would most likely return conditions similar to what we had envisioned, where both nations take the first step to ease tensions.
Ultimately, by establishing a joint collaboration in both regions, we wish not to solve the issue of microchips, the issue of water scarcity, or any specific topic. We wish to take a small step forward in all of these fields, in order to gradually ease tension and set both nations up to solve these issues together in the future. Our model does so by creating research and development centers in the respective regions, using both nations as AI power to find systematic solutions to water scarcity in the Nile River and explore the Arctic. Further opportunities involving the project, for example, internship opportunities for students, can be created down the line by the United Nations. Moreover, our model is one that follows the requirements of the Secretary General and one that works to optimize SDG 9. We would like to thank our panelists for their attention and extend our gratitude to the KSAC Club for the opportunity to let our creative spirits run loose at such a pivotal time in history. Thank you.